Hello everybody, it's Nick here with Nick Tolman Music, and today we're going to go ahead and continue our beginner guitar lesson series using Melbay's Modern Guitar Method Grade 1. Okay, so today we're going to be looking at page 28, and there's going to be two things that happen here on page 28. The first is we're going to learn a new song, okay? And this song is going to incorporate all the things that we've been talking about in the last 3 or 4 lessons with chords and bass notes and kind of separating those and using them together to create this song. And it's called Long, Long Ago. And then we're going to have a discussion about whole steps and half steps. And we're going to introduce a scale study here in the book, and we'll talk more about that. So let's go ahead and dive in. So at the top of the page, we're going to start with this new song that we're learning, which is Long, Long Ago. And as you'll notice, it looks pretty similar to a lot of the stuff we've been working on. We have very clear bass notes and chords. And really, everything that we've talked about up to this point will translate. You should be able to use what you've learned as long as you've really done each of the lessons up to this point. You should have the skills to be able to play this. But I am going to kind of just highlight a few things that that might be confusing or that might come up with this, all right? So you'll notice, if we look at the first measure, we have a bass note with a rest above it, which we've seen. But usually what we've seen is something like this, where we have like bass, chord, 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 bass, chord, chord, chord. Or maybe like an alternating bass, where we have bass, chord, bass, chord, bass, chord, bass, chord, right? This one's a little different because actually the melody is going to be happening in the bass, right? We have bass, chord. Right? And that's going to affect a little bit what happens with our hand during this chord. So we're focusing on really two things. We're focusing on the chord and what's happening through the measures that contain that chord, but we're also focusing on this melody. All right. Now we'll kind of talk about some of the specific logistics here in a minute. Okay, so there's one little thing that you need to be aware of on this, and it's just kind of a funny thing with the way that it's written. You'll notice that there is a rest above all of the bass notes. And now we've seen that before, right? Bass note with no chord happening above it, so there's a rest above it. And then you have chord, chord, chord. Now this one, we have bass note with rest, and then we have chord, and then we have 2 more bass notes with rest above them, which would actually kind of indicate that that chord sound shouldn't be continuing above those bass notes. To actually play that, it gets a little funny because you have to mute that chord sound. And for me, that is an important skill to practice, and I would say spend some time practicing that, being able to kill the sound and continue those bass notes. But for me playing this song, personally, I feel like letting that chord sound ring is just fine and totally appropriate for this song. So something like... That's how I will play it in the exercises, and you can practice it that way, but also feel free to practice it the other way, which would be muting the sound after each chord to kill it so it's not ringing above the other bass notes. Now for me, when I do that, I'm muting it with my right hand for all of these, mainly because there are some open strings that are being strummed, so muting with the left hand is going to prove to be a little bit more difficult. So experiment with that. For now, I'm going to let those chord tones ring as they come. So, all right, let's dive in. So here is Long, Long Ago at 72 on the metronome. 1, 2, ready, and play. For me, this exercise is a lot of fun to play, just kind of feeling that melody in the bass note and kind of getting used to being able to have that bass line movement happening independently from your chords. So a couple things that you might do on this one when you're practicing, especially where there's a very clear melody and chord structure taking place. I might spend some time doing this separately, okay? So I might play just the bass notes to practice. And then, when I'm feeling comfortable with that, I might start incorporating the chords. Now also, you'll need to kind of pay attention to the chords and what notes you're strumming when you do the chords. Because of the bass movement, you'll notice that each time you strum the chord, there's a different number of notes that you're actually strumming. In the first measure, you're strumming 4 notes, so it's a good portion of the C chord. And then in the second measure, since the bass note has moved up, when you strum the chord, you're only strumming the top 3 strings. And when you move to the third measure, the bass note has moved up even more. So when you go to strum the chord, you're really actually only strumming the top 2 strings. You're just getting the C and the E. So the chord kind of gets smaller as you move through in those first 4 measures. And that's okay. It's just a matter of kind of paying attention to what notes you're actually strumming and which ones you're not. Let's go ahead and jump the metronome up to 120. You can hear what this is like at a faster tempo. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, ready, play. There you go. Good luck with this one. It's a fun exercise to play. I really enjoy it. And yeah. So let's go ahead and move on to the second half of the page. And we're talking about steps, okay? And this is kind of diving into just kind of some musical theory and understanding of what's happening with the guitar. So we have half steps and we have whole steps. Now a half step is the smallest distance that we can have between 2 notes. So translated to the guitar, whenever you move from one fret to the next fret, that is a half step. And that can be up or down the fretboard. Now there are places on the guitar where half steps exist even moving between the strings. So for instance, if you play a chromatic scale, you can check out the link in my description below. I have a chromatic scale exercise that you can download, as well as some other scale exercises very similar to this one that are great practice. But anyways, when you move up and down the chromatic scale, you're always moving in half steps. That's what the chromatic scale is, just all half steps up and down. But you notice if you're moving up it, open 1, 2, 3, 4, and from the 4th fret to the open of the next string is also a half step. Now, a half step has a very particular sound. You can know it's a half step by the way it sounds. And a lot of people know, if you know, like the Jaws theme. Right? That's a half step sound. the smallest distance that we can play between two notes. Now a whole step is another common step, and it is a little bit different. It's a slightly bigger step. It is equal to 2 half steps. So anytime you move from one fret and you skip a fret and go up, that is what we call a whole step. Okay, so a half step would be from one fret to the next fret, but if you skip a fret, that is a whole step. So major and minor scales are made up of whole steps and half steps, and depending on where the half steps lie determines whether or not it's a major scale or a minor scale or some other kind of scale. So in this scale exercise, you'll notice that you do have whole steps and half steps, and they're going to kind of happen in different places. The scale exercise below is in the key of C, and in the key of C, the half steps are going to happen between E and F and B and C. So E and F, and then B and C. So if I was going to play a C major scale from top to bottom, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. We have all whole steps except for 2 places. Half step here from E to F, and then half step here from B to C. Okay? You don't have to stress too much about steps at this point in your playing. It's just being aware that exists, and that these scales that we do are going to contain whole steps and half steps. So let's go ahead and take a look here at a daily study. So it is all 8th notes. It's been a few lessons since we've talked about 8th notes, so just as a reminder, an 8th note is worth half of a beat. And when we count these 8th note lines, we're going to be thinking 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. We use the ands to subdivide the beat to help us know how fast the 8th note should be. So starting at 72 on the metronome, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. That's how fast those 8th notes are going to be. Here we go. For now, we're going to practice all downstrokes. Okay, so it might be kind of fast on these downstrokes as we do this, but that's okay. Here we go. 1 and 2 and ready and play. Okay, I love scale exercises. To me, they're so great for developing dexterity, familiarity with all of the notes, and for me, they're just fun to play too. So, again, I have lots of other scale exercises on my website. Check it out, www.nicktolmanmusic.com. Available for download. They're also available on my Patreon page. If you decide to become a patron of Nick Tolman Music, you'll have access to all of my exercises and other materials that I have to help you as you're learning to play guitar. And I'm always updating that, adding more. So, all right, so there's a little note on the bottom. It says that you can repeat this exercise and practice doing down, up, down, up, down, up, which I would highly recommend. So I played all downstrokes as it's written, but I would definitely practice this doing down, up, picking. Okay, and there's going to be a point where if you're building up on the metronome, that you get to a tempo where just doing all downs isn't going to really be feasible. But I would also I would just practice both ways. Okay, so there's even a note on the bottom. I've been saying it in all these lessons, but it says The above study should be played slowly with a gradual increase of speed until a moderate tempo has been reached. It is an excellent daily exercise. True. All right, let's try it at 120. I'll go ahead and do down-up picking on this one. Here we go. 1, 2, 1 and 2, and ready, play. Yes, that's fun. Let's take it up even more. Let's see. Let's try it at like, let's see if I can do it at 160. I don't know if I can. Here we go. But again, these are great exercises to just kind of push your limits and see how quickly you can play them. Again, smoothly and musically, but definitely stuff to try to move, to push. Here we go. 1, 2, 1 and 2, and ready, play. Well, I kind of messed up there at the end. That's all right. Again, just play with these exercises and see what you can do with them, and that'll be great. So, thank you for tuning in today. As always, please subscribe. If you have any questions or anything, please leave them in the comments below. I'd be more than happy to help you out the best that I can. And if you haven't already checked out my website, www.nicktolmanmusic.com, please check it out, as well as my Patreon page. And we will see you next time. Thank you.